We have a couple new champions, and we had a very exciting show. Probably the best pay per view that AEW has done, at least in my opinion, because there was like no downtime. Every match had really good flow, and I was not bored during any of it. And when my wife wanted me to make tea, I was really mad that I had to pause it and, and catch back up. So, Caleb, what did you think of this show? I thought this show was just excellent.
I also thought the show was excellent. I actually didn't stop to think whether or not it's their best pay-per-view ever. It's definitely in the conversation for sure. But to me, there was a certain kind of magic behind the original All In. I just thought that was, even though I think for sure the overall match quality on this show was far superior, I think there was just something about that night that was very, very special to me. And
Yeah, but
again,
that's
that
not
was before
AEW though.
AEW. Right, exactly. So, okay, so let's say that this is the best pay-per-view they've ever done since becoming AEW. Again, I have favorites for very sentimental reasons when it comes to my wrestling fandom. But from bell to bell, start to finish, 7 to 11, whenever it was when they ended, this was the best series of matches that I've ever seen from AEW. And I don't think that's hyperbole.
Yeah, I'd have to check the runtime because I was running behind live for a while. So I think I stopped watching at 12:20 and I was running 35 minutes behind live, so it ended probably quarter to 12. So just the main
It
show
was
it's
a long show, I think. I
yeah,
think that's
just
what I've heard. But I think both you and I had to take little breaks in between, so I'm not sure. But I am told it was pretty long.
yeah, just the main show was 3 hours and say 45 minutes or so. Plus, you had the hour-long pre-show. You didn't really have to watch that except for the last 20 minutes to catch the one match that they had on the pre-show. But other than that, I thought this was just excellent. Just a few things just before we get into it. Of course, I don't know. Did you watch the countdown show that was on Friday?
I saw the first 30 minutes or so. I think I missed the tail end of it.
Yeah,
But from what I saw, it was very good.
yeah, if you saw the buy-in, then you pretty much saw the rest of the countdown stuff anyways. But it's like, okay, they do these excellent video packages. It's like, why isn't some of this stuff on Dynamite? Um, and like the opening video package of Full Gear, I wrote down that this opening video package was amazing, and it was like an excellent hype video. It's like, why didn't they close out Dynamite with a video like this? A 2 to 3 minute video, and trim this down to like a 90-second spot throughout and advertise on TNT leading up to this, because this hype package was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head when you say it's something they can do. Like, they've absolutely shown us that it's possible. They've got the people, they've got the resources to do this sort of stuff. It's just not on your weekly Dynamite. And I feel like that's on purpose. I do feel it's by design that they say, hey, Dynamite is our show, that we've got this amount of airtime, so we're going to put our best matches, our most entertaining acts. We're going to do that. They don't really actually want to put on, I think, some of these video packages, because it's kind of proven through ratings that if you're not wrestling in the ring, then generally the rule is your ratings go down for that segment, even if it's a backstage or a dinner debonair didn't do amazing ratings because it wasn't wrestling in the ring, which is kind of the tried and true method. So I think it is by design they're not putting them there, but I think that's an absolute shame, and I think you need to bite the bullet and put some of this stuff on there in order to further your characters and your storylines, because like you said, they're really good.
You might have a dip short term, but long term, it's going to pay off extremely a lot more. And if you're getting dips for non-wrestling segments, then your non-wrestling segment isn't very good. It's not that it's a non-wrestling segment; it's because it's not a good segment. I mean, there are plenty
Right,
of
but I
good
think
segments that are not wrestling.
I totally agree with that 100% as a fan, right? But as someone who might have, is not as hardcore, a little bit, more of a casual wrestling fan, when they tune in, they have been conditioned by WWE that backstage segments are kind of stupid and, dumb interviews like we were talking about recently. So I think it's actually kind of this problem that AEW is inheriting, in that people are tuning out for backstage segments because they think it's going to be dumb, and it could be really good. But what they need to do is start doing more promo packages and backstage, character building segments that are good, to show their audience, hey, you can trust us. When we leave the ring, it's still going to be quality programming.
Right, exactly. So that's why I say it may have a short-term you may get hit short-term, but long-term it's going to pay off in spades if you are building up these characters a lot bigger, because you need stars, and just having somebody in the ring wrestling does not make a star. Obviously, when you go back to the biggest stars out there, what made them stars was not what they did in the ring 90% of the time. It was the segments between the being in the ring. And you look at stuff like Stone Cold Steve Austin. I mean, the vast majority of the biggest segments that he was in were not matches.
Right.
And the things that I remember, the
agreement. Yeah. I think it's just that the last 15 years, 20 years or so has shown people, they've basically now been conditioned, this stuff is stupid. Because every person that when you said that just now, right, you said, think of these great stars 90% of the time, what they're known for is outside the ring. Every person who popped into my brain just now is from before 2000. I thought of The Rock, I thought of Stone Cold, I thought of Dusty, I thought of Ric Flair.
Hulk Hogan.
Like, you're right, I remember them, but none of them are recent.
Right. Yeah, that's the biggest thing. And then you have kind of just because of the barrier, I don't really notice it as much watching New Japan, that you have the big stars like Okada and Naito, but they don't do as much out of ring segments, and it's just kind of the language barrier that is obviously a problem too. So like, even if they did a segment, it wouldn't translate as well for a lot of English speakers. So I don't know. It's just one of those things that here, I think, especially for American wrestling, and being on TV, having some of these segments, they can put together these video packages. We've seen it over and over again. These countdown shows have been amazing. They put out these videos on their YouTube channel that are just excellent. It's like, okay, why don't you cut that, 6-minute video down into a 90-second segment and throw it on TV? I don't think you're going to lose any viewers. And if you do lose a few viewers, you're putting stock into the characters. That's going to pay off in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when those viewers, get on Reddit or talk to their buddy at work about it, and they say, oh, that was a good match. He's like, yeah, it was a great match because of all this previous storyline that was established, this hype, you know what I mean? So I think by just nature of them continuing to do what they're doing, they will pick up those viewers when it comes to those segments. And I think stuff like the Dinner Debonair, as well as the Moxley and Kingston promo from last week, I think these are the kind of things that will help them turn that corner to show, hey, even if we're not wrestling, it's still really good, funny, whatever the case may be.
Oh man, the hype section of the Moxley Kingston during the countdown and in the pre-show, that was just amazing work right there that they did. They had him doing like a sit down, sort of just like a talk to the camera, sitting on like railroad tracks out in the middle of like a shipping yard or something like that. It's just like, he is so emotional talking about, like, you can see everything on his face, and he just gets across everything that he's feeling, and it just adds so much more. And that, I think, made the match even better, knowing how Kingston works as a character, and then adding everything with the history of him and Moxley as well. It's like, this is all the stuff that we should have been getting for the past 4 weeks. Obviously they weren't really planning on this particular match happening, but I mean, some of this stuff was just amazing. We should have gotten on Dynamite.
Right. 100%.
All right, so let's get into this show here. We'll talk about the pre-show real quick. There was a match. It was Allison Kaye versus Serena Deeb for the NWA Women's Championship. Serena Deeb beat Thunder Rosa a couple weeks ago, or actually probably a week and a half ago at this point. And Allison Kaye is actually a former NWA champion. Very interesting here, especially the two competitors where they are currently signed, as Allison Kaye is currently a free agent and Serena Deeb is a full-time AEW wrestler as well. So interesting that the NWA Championship and who was challenging are not signed full time to NWA, so that was interesting. It was actually a relatively short match. I think it went maybe 8 or 9 minutes, which is short for AEW standards, and it was pretty much a solid back and forth. Allison Kaye got in a lot of decent offense, but in the end we have Serena Deeb hitting I think she hit a dragon screw in the ropes right near the end and put on the Serenity Lock, which is basically like a half crab with like a arm lock with her knee holding back the arm, and she gets the victory and retains the NWA Championship.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for an hour worth of buy-in, they did a lot of the packages and stuff on the buy-in as well, kind of similar to the Countdown show, which I think is a good use of time. But I also would have been fine with this getting a few more minutes. I thought that everything they did was great. Allysin Kaye looks wonderful. I believe they said that her contract with NWA is expired, so she's a free agent. So I mean, it feels like a no-brainer to sign. This is the kind of vibe from the women that I was really hoping their women's division was going to be like when the company started. It wasn't quite, and now I'm really hoping that there might be a little bit of a transition in the works to bring in more people like Serena Deeb, like Allysin Kaye. I think that this is exactly what they need. Honestly, the match was very good. Again, could have gone longer in my opinion. Should have been, for an hour buy-in, they really could have taken 10 or 15 minutes here, and I would have been completely fine. Both very technically sound, and yeah, the right decision as well. I think we both predicted Serena to win, and she should. After the match, also, I believe Thunder Rosa came out to you're probably going to say that, but she came out to kind of confront Serena Deeb, who she took the championship off of. So obviously that program is not done, and that is fine with me because their first match on AEW was wonderful, and I'm sure that they're going to do it again.
Yeah, I'm guessing since the angle is playing out on AEW, that the match is probably going to happen on AEW at some point as well. Because it'd be really weird if I guess it makes sense if they hyped up the match and had it on an NWA show, because then it's like cross promotion. It's like, hey, we're over here, so come check us out if you want to see this match.
Right.
So I guess
As a little aside, also on the recent media call that Cody did with, the media, essentially, a lot of different wrestling journalists on the call. They kind of have one for about an hour that they hype up each of their pay-per-views. And Cody made mention multiple times. He used the phrase that the bridges are down. You know what I mean? The moat, is covered for any companies that want to collaborate with them. It seems like their door is open and they're willing to listen at least to all comers. So I would not be surprised actually to see a hyped, Serena Deeb Thunder Rosa rematch, and for them to do it on an NWA card and kind of have AEW do a little hype for it. I wouldn't be surprised, and I think that'd be neat.
Yeah, and just with everything that's been going on, of course, we still kind of have the lockdown from being able to get Japanese talent in, so we're still missing all of our Japanese talent, and then we have even people who are now currently in a semi-retirement, like we have Kairi Sane, who left NXT, or was she still in NXT when she left? No, she was in the main roster. But she's somebody you could bring in for like a month-long program. You don't need to have her for a ton, but there's tons of free agents out there on the women's side, and I think they just need to hunt out some of the competitors that are really, really good and kind of work on that division. Sadly, I think there needs to be a few cuts out of the current AEW women's locker room, just because they just can't get up to the level that they need to be on a national stage. And obviously that's a bummer, but that's just kind of how it goes when you are you're trying to get to the top of the mountain, and you need to have those quality talent, especially the ones that are already out there. And WWE is going to try to snag them if they can, but AEW can get them first. Right.
As an aside to this, by the way, just want to make a quick point that I love Thunder Rosa. I just want to put it all out there and say she's one of my favorites. Even just her music hitting and her coming down to the ring on the the pre-show, essentially, I was still like, when it hit and she walked out, I was like, yes. Like, I don't know, I know I'm a mark, but it really jazzed me up. I think that she's very good. Every match, again, that I've seen has just been really great. I've not seen, I don't know, she just seems like a consummate professional. And I really hope that they continue to feature her more and more. So just a point.
Yeah, I'm curious where this goes if even if they do have a match, Serena Deeb having a rematch with Thunder Rosa, if they're going to put the title back on Thunder Rosa, because I believe she is training for an MMA fight. At least that's been kind of the rumor of why she dropped it in the first place. So that could be still in the works, but I guess we see. So we go on to our main card of Full Gear. Like I said, the opening package was an amazing hype video. It was narrated with a professional narration. They had licensed music in it. So it was like professional of professional promo packages, and it was excellent. And we start off the night with Adam Hangman Page versus Kenny Omega for the #1 contendership. This is the tournament final. Also, they point out it's a no time limit on this match as well, so there has to be a winner. Though I kind of thought to myself, what happens if there's a double countout or DQ? But actually, the ref at one point when they were fighting on the outside, they're like, "There has to be a winner, guys. Get back into the ring." I don't know if you noticed him say that or not.
I didn't. That's funny.
So the match actually starts off. Kenny offers a handshake. Page rejects it. And then this match just went a million miles an hour. We have right out of the gate, Page kills Omega with a big foot when he went for the rise of the Terminator, and they fight on the outside, throwing each other in the barricade. This is where the ref is like, guys, we need a winner. Get back into the ring. Omega actually jumped over the barricade onto the permanent railing and did a moonsault onto the floor, which was just awesome. And then this is kind of where the match went a little weird, and I can't figure out if it was on purpose or if it was a happy accident or if it was a real accident, where Kenny goes for the "you can't escape," and when he dropped Hangman and he usually bounces back up to his feet, he slipped and he stayed down for a while and kind of favoring the knee, and then he finally got up to do the moonsault, and then he basically kept favoring that knee throughout the entire match. So I'm not sure if he just thought on the fly, hey, I might as well make something of this, or if he really did tweak his knee. He seemed okay when he was running the ropes and whatnot, so I think it was him just being amazing at what he does and realizes, well, I just screwed up, so what can I do with this? And just sold the knee for the rest of the match. They continue on. They actually exchange one-winged angel attempts where Hangman actually tried to hit one of his own. Omega ends up hitting a V-trigger here, and Hangman hits a power bomb on the stage and then one in the ring for a 2 count. Omega hits a devastating Tiger Driver 98 for a 2 count. They both then have these great spots where they're mirroring each other. So, one of them will hit a discus forearm, then the other one hits a discus forearm. Hangman ends up hitting Dead Eyes for a 2 count. Omega avoids a buckshot and rolls up Hangman for a very, very close 2 count. Omega hits a dragon screw, 3 V-triggers. He gets Page up for the one-winged angel, and Page is struggling, but he ends up tipping forward just enough for Hangman to get it on and hits the one-winged angel and gets the victory. I thought just how they struggled over that final one-winged angel was really good. I thought Hangman was actually going to slip out of it, and that was not the end of the match, but I love how they did that.
So this match, honestly, made me feel all of the range of emotions here, and I thought it was so good. My biggest takeaway from this match, before I kind of tell you a little bit more about it, what I thought in detail, but the biggest takeaway is that, in my opinion, this was not a 5-star match. This was like 4.75 because they did that on purpose. I think they're leaving an extra gear for the next, not to make a full gear pun, but I think they're leaving an extra level for what is inevitably, the rematch down the line for the championship or whatever the case may be. This storyline is far from over. And I thought that they purposefully didn't get into fifth gear. They just went to fourth and cruised there for pretty much the entire match from the bell. And it was amazing. And you're like, I know that there's just a little bit extra that they could do to just have one of the best matches, you'll ever see. But here, they left you wanting a little bit more. And I think that was so smart on their part. Yeah, every spot, the mirroring of moves, the countering of moves, it really started with a lot of good counters, both kind of going for some moves, even not even signature moves, just, basic whatever, but they just know each other well enough that at this point they're dodging and, avoiding each other's offense. So I thought that was amazing. Again, that last one wing angel attempt, like you mentioned, like it really actually made me feel what I feel like Hangman wanted us to feel. He's such a good actor. We've talked about it before, but he emotes so well, both in and out of the ring. And I mean, he was like moving around, moving his head because he knew that if he got hit with the one winged angel, it was over, right? Like it was almost like he knew that. So he's like, no, he can't grab my head. He's trying to bob and weave. And as soon as Kenny grabbed his head, he very quickly just pulled him over, hit him with the move. And it was like in that moment, as soon as he grabbed Hangman's neck, Hangman knew that he was beat and continued to be very sad after the match. And it was funny because like in my head, I'm like, I don't want this to be the end. I don't want this to be the end. And as soon as he grabbed it, you're like resigned to your fate, just like Hangman was. Like he knew the match was over and we knew the match was over as soon as he hit him. Man, these guys are just put on a masterclass of psychology. And I really, really enjoyed this match.
I was expecting a little something after the match was over. But they're still slow playing the storyline as it actually continues on later in the night as well. Basically Hangman just looked dejected, and Omega was kind of just kind of over him for a second, and actually did tap him on the shoulder a couple times before making his way out, and he just left, and that was about it. So I thought there'd be a little bit more, but they are still continuing to slow play this storyline, and we'll talk about another addition to this story later on in the show.
Right. I was going to say, when you've got a storyline that's been going on as long as this has, it does require just bit by little bit. And it feels a little, sometimes as a fan, you're like, they're not going to have a big development, but it's the little tiny bits. That's how you stretch a story out over the course of a year,
Next we have John Silver versus Orange Cassidy. I know some people were talking about why is this match even happening. If you guys don't remember, John Silver cost Orange Cassidy the match with Cody Rhodes for the lumberjack match. That's where this kind of came from. John Silver injected himself into Orange Cassidy's stuff. It's not just they had a brawl on this past Wednesday. Some people already seem to forget that interjection into that match. This match was actually really fun. They had a lot of good comedy spots in here, as well as really good work from both of them. Orange Cassidy just incenses Silvers when he puts his hands in his pockets. At one point, after Orange Cassidy got knocked down, John Silver pulls Orange Cassidy's arms out of his pockets, and the inside of his pockets come out, and he tears them off. So he tears the pockets out of Orange Cassidy's pants. Silver is like ridiculously strong. He catches the swinging DDT and in mid move, and then powers that into a vertical brainbuster. And then Silver just keeps playing to the crowd, flexing. JR asks if he was mentally checked before he was hired, and Excalibur says, well, he's with the Dark Order. They take in a lot of strays. And then Silver sends OC hard into the turnbuckles a few times, and then Orange Cassidy hits a cross body, hits a swing DDT for a 2 count. Silver does a one-handed gorilla press to Orange Cassidy, and Orange Cassidy reverses the spin doctor into a Rana, hits a Michinoku driver for a 2 count, and then Silver hits a really fast series of kicks. I love that sequence that he does. This isn't the first time I've seen it. He's really good with that sequence. Orange Cassidy hits a stun dog, and then Silver hits a pump kick spin doctor for a 2 count, but then Silver goes for a spinning lariat in honor of Brody Lee, trying to use Brody Lee's finisher, but Orange Cassidy hits the orange punch beach break and gets the 3 count. And again, no post match anything really. It was just the end right there.
Right. This was where I knew my predictions that we did on Wednesday were totally just messed up. I just said, "Oh well, it was fun while it lasted." Making these predictions with Eric, I thought John Silver was going to get the win here because I feel like that he is receiving a bit of a push right now, which it seems kind of apparent. That said, I think you don't go straight to elevating him over Orange Cassidy, who's coming off a win with Chris Jericho, right? I didn't actually think about the win over Chris Jericho. So you're not really going to have Orange Silver. Even with shenanigans, you probably don't want Silver beating Orange Cassidy. I'm sorry, I think I said Orange Silver. But you don't want Orange Cassidy being beat so soon after his match with Jericho, so I totally understand that. But really, I realized during this match, like, it's enough. They still get the point across of pushing John Silver with just a 10 to 15 minute match. This match was a little longer than I thought it was. I don't know the exact runtime, but I think it was in the area of 15, maybe a little under that. It was, there was some length to this match, and it was competitive. So it's not like, he's totally being squashed, and he's on a pay-per-view card too. So really, I mean, I think maybe giving him the win would have been too much. I think this is just right, enough of a push for him to look really good with Orange Cassidy. I was really looking forward to the comedy in this match, but genuinely surprised how much I loved the wrestling. And I know they're both great wrestlers, but I was really looking forward to the laughs. And it was kind of like come for the laughs, stay for the great in-ring action, apparently. The pocket spot was hilarious. He stuffed the pockets in his mouth. He has this great angry face, John Silver does, and doing his little flex. And when he came out was funny. So, initially started with this humor. But really, like you said, a very, very sound match. Just great work rate. And I think, the right result now that I think about Cassidy coming off the Jericho win. Very good match. And I was so happy. That one-armed or one-handed gorilla press was nuts. When he did that, I was like, you got to be kidding me. This guy is just a dozer of a man. So,
yeah, and the in-ring work was excellent, and Silver looks really good even in defeat here. Really, it was his character that overcame and ended up costing him in the end by wanting to get some sort of retribution on behalf of Brody Lee and use his finisher, but it ends up not working out for him. So, I'm curious what Brody Lee has to say about that if we ever see that come to play.
Well, I do believe that currently on BTE, there's a little bit of a growing friendship. John Silver was like the outcast of the group on BTE until finally, I think a few weeks ago, John Silver actually either came out to help, Brody when he was being attacked or maybe interfere in his match, something. But at some point, I think in the last month or so, Silver was the only member of the Dark Order to come to his aid at some point. And now I think on BTE, he's starting to be like, no, you're okay, So I think they're kind of growing this weird misfit bond.
He was the one who seconded him for the dog collar match.
That's right.
Next up, we have Darby Allin versus Cody Rhodes. That he has his name back. He said on the media call that he had grown used to the mononym. But now
that was a bunch of lies.
Yeah.
He's so happy.
Yeah. For the TNT Championship, this is actually made into a 60-minute time limit match, not the usual 20 minutes for the TNT Championship. The TNT Championship not being defended on TNT. Mike Chioda is the ref. He actually got a chant for himself. Actually, he looks pretty good. It looks like he lost a few pounds since the last time we saw him as well. Cody is healing it up throughout this entire match. He was showing off with some flexing. He did a cartwheel at one point. He offered a hand up to Darby when he knocked him down. Just like a slap in the face type of deal. Darby fakes a dive and Cody covers up, so Darby ends up doing a low dive and basically shoulder blocks Cody right in the back. Darby his arm starts to get worked over. Cody tosses Darby onto the stage with the hammerlock on. He just throws him over the ropes. Cody hits an avalanche hammerlock slam at one point, so he just keeps working that arm and working that arm. Cody, I think, has been watching Yuya Uemura in the G1 because he used the short arm scissors. I have not seen that move forever until Uemura started using it in the G1 this year. Darby hits a few slaps and then a code red, a really nice looking code red for 2. Cody hits a super kick and tries for a crossroad, but Darby grabs the rope and pulls himself over to the corner, and then is just holding on to one of the turnbuckles, and he actually ends up ripping the turnbuckle pad off. Cody gets sent into the sort of exposed turnbuckle. It's actually where the connection to actually make the full loop of the wires are, so it's kind of where that bulk of clamps and everything inside the ropes actually are, or the steel cables in their case. Cody hits a bunch of body slams on Darby, but he just keeps getting up. He does a gorilla press slam for a 2 count. Cody grabs his weight belt off the turnbuckle, but the ref gets him to drop it. Oh, I missed that. Actually, Cody hit an avalanche crossroads off the top rope. Darby actually rolled over to the edge of the ring, so Darby's arm was underneath the ropes and out of bounds, so he couldn't get the pin. And then Cody grabs the weight belt. He drops it. Darby catches a disaster kick and puts on the Last Supper for a 2 count. He then hits the flip over stunner, hits a coffin drop for a 2 count, and then Allin reverses a crossroads into a sunset flip. But Cody sits into it, and then they exchange a bunch of switches and roll-ups, and Allin ends up getting the 3 count on one of those roll-ups. And he is the new TNT champion. I loved this finish, because you see this in matches all the time where they just reverse roll-ups and nobody ever wins, but this ended up being the end of the match.
Yeah, I echo that entirely. That's actually been one of my pet peeves for a long time, is that that the match is not finishing until someone is applying and potentially getting kicked out of their finishing move. No one ever, Jericho doesn't win matches with the lion salt, right? Like, it just doesn't happen ever. This needs to happen more. Like, if you're so confident in a Cody cutter or a disaster kick, then go for the pinfall, and at some point it needs to win, right? So this was absolutely the right type of finish. It also showed that, for me, a little bit of evolution with Darby, in that, like, he didn't have to win with the coffin drop or the most reckless move. In fact, it was the least reckless move or pin that anyone went for in the entire match. It was just strategic. It was smart. And he took a smart win instead of having to completely kill himself. So for me, that was absolutely the coolest finish. And I was, had a little pop inside when, not inside, kind of outside too. I was very excited when Darby won. I think that this was my prediction, and this was what I wanted to happen. It happened just the right way. Cody, you're right, absolutely played the heel in this match, doing his push-ups that Arn always gets mad at him for, doing the cartwheels around, and really just, almost using the weight belt as well. Didn't want to get disqualified. And actually really, really innovative spot as well, where he had the belt above his head. And I think he had it kind of like over his neck maybe, and he just dropped it, and he dropped it behind him. And Darby immediately reaches around his legs, pulls the weight ball, and causes Cody to trip backwards and fall, and he goes for a pinfall. So I thought that was a cool little spot. But I really, really love this match. Great result. I really just enjoy anything that Cody's involved in these days.
Yeah, this match I thought was excellent. There was one point Cody was showing off to the crowd doing some push-ups, and the boos just rained down. So, like, everybody was behind Darby Allin here. And then after the match, Cody is just, like, surprised that everything is going on. And I'm thinking, come on, beat the shit out of Darby. Beat the shit out of Darby. But nope, he doesn't. He ends up kneeling down and handing the title to Darby Allin. But Darby Allin is not going to walk away unscathed because Taz interrupts and he says, enough, I need a plastic bag because I'm going to vomit. Enough with the emotions and the tears. Man up. The two of you get your bitch asses to the back. And that's when Cage and Starks run in from behind. They beat up Darby and Cody. And then Cage and Starks pick up the belt at the same time, and they're having a little tug of war, and Taz has to grab it from them. So that was a nice little contention between the two of them. I thought that was great. They take Darby to the outside and throw him through a set piece. Basically the same set piece that Kenny Omega went through last year during the Moxley match. And then Darby Allin had come in on the car that he had in his promo package last Wednesday, and they get him on top of the hood, and they're going to smash his arm in the door. And this is when Big Will Hobbs runs out with a chair to make the save and sends them running away. But Darby Allin is still laid out on the car at the end of the segment, and that is how it ends. So we still have this going on. So then it kind of made up for Cody not turning right here and just beating the crap out of Darby. So we still have the ongoing tension between Darby and Team Taz, and Will Hobbs appears to be part of that as well. So does Will Hobbs stay with Darby, or is this a smokescreen and he's going to turn and go with Team Taz? I don't know. I guess we'll see.
It's a very good question. I was thinking kind of along similar lines, because I don't believe Will Hobbs actually took out anybody. He just kind of ran up with a chair. I think he whacked the car with the chair to make some noise.
Yep.
They all ran, but he didn't actually lay anybody out. So there is a possibility that there's a swerve incoming, that he's going to join Team Taz. For now, though, I would actually prefer, I think, for him to stay babyface and have a bit of a program here with Darby. I kind of think that they almost might go the way, and now this is just fantasy booking here, but this is something I'd really like to see. Obviously, the 6-man tag that we discussed a little bit over the last couple of weeks, that it was a match that unfortunately due to COVID never happened, and we both wanted to see, was the Team Taz plus Lance Archer with Moxley, Will Hobbs, and Darby. I'm kind of hoping, and this is just my hope, is that based on, because Cody came to Darby's defense when they ambushed him over there. They dragged him over to the car, and Cody came running over and trying to lay out Team Taz as well. What I'd like to see is maybe a series of matches or a little feud here between Team Taz with Taz, at ringside, but against Darby and Will Hobbs with Cody at ringside. I'd actually kind of like, maybe they don't have to join the Nightmare family, but I would like to see him almost take a coaching role, maybe just for a few weeks on TV, and kind of being almost a little bit of a mentor figure. I don't know if that works, because, he and Darby have had a series of matches now where Darby comes out on top. He took the championship. Does Cody, logically, does he want to coach this guy? But I thought it would be neat to have, Starks and Brian Cage with Taz, because Taz can do all the talking, right? With Darby and Will, and maybe have Cody do some talking. I thought that'd be a cool little dynamic. We'll see where they go with it. But either way, I really did like the afterlude to this match. So we finally kind of get our dose of post-match shenanigans, which was missing from the first few.
Yep. Next we have a quick segment. Dasha's with QT and Dustin. They cut a promo on Allie, pretty much calling her a gold digger, and Butcher and Blade versus the Natural Nightmares on Dynamite this week is now going to be a bunkhouse match. Fire out of Dustin on this promo, but it was fine. It wasn't anything special.
Seems like fire out of Dustin on a lot of his promos in AEW. I really kind of enjoy the and it's almost like maybe you should save a little bit of that for a bigger build or a big pay-per-view. But like any match he's in these days, it just feels like he really gets jazzed up. So I like it. He's a cool guy.
They also add Tay Conti versus Red Velvet for Dynamite, along with what we already knew, Penta versus Phoenix for Dynamite. We have 3 matches already announced for Dynamite this week, so should be a good one coming up after this. Next up, we have Nyla Rose versus Hikaru Shida with Vicky Guerrero at ringside. Of course, this is kind of the first major match with Vicky Guerrero at ringside, and of course she is going to come into play. Shida goes straight into striking and hits a few drop kicks to a down Nila Rose. On the outside, she hits a leg kick and then it's a rising knee with Nyla kind of bent off the apron. Then she hits a rising knee, sending Nyla through the barricade, and then the ref heads over to check on Nyla, and Shida starts making her way back to the ring, and this is when Vicky kneecaps Shida. Was it with a chair or a kendo stick?
I think kendo stick.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. Somebody else said a chair on a different podcast, but I didn't go back to watch. Then Nyla starts to attack the knee, and she goes up top, and Shida follows, but ends up getting tossed down in basically a face buster. Shida rolls out of the way of a senton, hits a few kicks, then a suplex. Man, Shida's so strong. She just like she actually suplexed Nyla in this, and then later on she hit a falcon arrow on Nyla as well. So she's lifting somebody who's like twice her weight probably. She hits a running boot. Nyla flops onto the stage. Shida hits a drop kick to the outside, and then another one in the ring for a 2. Then Nyla hits a lariat and a power bomb for a 2 count, and then hits Shida's running knee, and Shida just kicks out at 1 after that. And Shida is basically exhausted and completely beat up at this point. And then Shida hits her own running knee, puts Nyla on the top rope, gives her an avalanche falcon arrow, and then lifts Nyla at 2 so she can hit her running knee. And this is where Vicky grabs Shida's leg. Really, she just kind of brushed it. She was a little out of position on this one. So Shida gets sent to the outside from Nyla, hitting her from behind, but then she pushes Nyla into Vicky to take her out, then runs her into the side of the stage, then into the barricade, then back into the ring. Shida hits the running knee for a 2 count, and then she basically hits like 4 Kamigoyes, but they were basically, she was holding her hair instead of her wrists. 4 Kamigoyes to the face, and she just is completely exhausted at this point, and she just flops down on top of Nyla and gets the 3 count. I really loved this finish because Shida was like at the end, like this was it. This is her last ditch effort here, and just hitting the 4 knees to the face, and then getting the victory. I thought it was good, and I'm glad to see Shida retaining here.
Yeah, absolutely. I had predicted Nyla Rose to hotshot the title a little bit, honestly, just to kind of kickstart the women's division. I thought that might be something they need to do. I prefer it staying with Shida. I just hope that, maybe moving forward, because I believe there were some questions on the media call with Cody as well. Hey, why haven't we seen as much build to some of these matches for the women's division? He had a very political answer, of course, but I do think that they need to do something here. Something needs to kind of get jazzed up. We need a little bit more build, maybe even some more promo packages to, start drawing more attention to this women's division. The women's division on AEW that I'm more concerned about is the NWA women's division, and it's not their show. So that should tell you something about, the women's division here. So I prefer it staying with Shida, and in fact, good match, right? This was very good. The finish was great, like you said. Just kneeing someone to death is a great way to win a match. My one complaint from a psychology point of view is that this is a championship match. It's not necessarily a grudge match, I wouldn't say. I don't really like them pulling each other up at 2 so they can do something else. If it's about the championship, just go for 3. If you think you've got the match won, just go for that pinfall and hope they stay down because you're after the championship. I prefer that kind of psychology. I'm going to pull them back up and do something else, or I'm going to hit, their finisher on them. I prefer that in a match with more storyline, and there just wasn't a ton of storyline or build for this match. In the end, it was still a good match. And again, like you said, the finish of kneeing someone 100 times is a great idea, especially when you're the smaller opponent. I just wish that there had been really more build. This would have totally made sense if they'd been at each other's throats for the past, couple months on Dynamite, but they weren't. So overall, I got to say good. It's let down a little bit by the build, but the right finish and a cool finish at that.
Yeah, from what I've gathered from various people talking about this, that this was not the original intended match for this show, and something fell through. So that's why they had to put this one together at the last minute. I'm not sure which way it was supposed to go, if it was going to be somebody else from the NWA or not. But I guess this was not the original plan. But I guess that's how it goes sometimes. But as far as with the women's division here, keeping it on Cheetah, where do we go from here? Obviously, we have Britt Baker, which is probably going to be her next big program. But again, as dealing with the women's division, there are definitely, we need to rotate in some people and rotate out some people. So, we should obviously be bring in a more prominent role Serena, and of course actually Tay Conti has actually been really good, so she's going to be on Dynamite, so she's probably going to get a bit more of a showcase there. But then also Thunder Rosa, when you can use her, and then unfortunately Chris Statlander's injured, so she's out under Riho, of course, and Yaka, I always forget. Why am I totally spacing? Yuki Sakazaka.
Nope. Yeah.
She's over there as well. And then some of the other Stardom ladies, are out. And yeah, I think, and then probably rolling off like a Big Swole. Just not a huge fan of her work in general. So, there's some people that need to be rolled down the card, and then some people need to be brought up and be made a little bit prominent. Hopefully we'll see that.
They've got the right women and are continuing to sign or to bring in, maybe other NWA talent. I think that they're really forming the women's division to what it needs to be. And it really feels like they are on the right path. I also, at first, I wasn't a huge fan of just as many, not that there's anything wrong with it, but I wasn't as fan of as many Joshi wrestlers, especially when they're competing with the likes of Nyla or Big Swole, someone who it clearly just has them by pounds and pounds. It's a little tougher to believe. I like it scattered. I think Shida is great. But I kind of like having, not that I don't miss Riho, I do miss Riho, but having Shida as the one woman of that style in the women's division right now, but bringing other people in Britt Baker and Nyla, people who can do other things, other styles, and especially now this very technical style they're moving towards with Serena, Deeb, and some of the other folks. I think that they're moving the right direction to have a mix. And you're right. I think unfortunately maybe there do need to be some rotations on who is featured most prominently. Not that there needs to be cuts per se. You can maybe move them to dark or do more training in certain areas. But I do hope that the direction they're moving is the direction they continue to go, because it's looking up for sure. I just hope that Britt Baker comes back and they really dive into a meaty program here with Shida. That's my desire, because I do feel like there's a lot of potential for build, which would be something great to see in a women's match, especially surrounding the title.
Yeah, I totally forgot about Shayna. She's stuck in Portugal, so that's probably why she hasn't been back as well. She was always really good. And some unsigned, they still have not signed Danny Jordan. I don't know why, because she's really good. I like her a lot. And then, of course, Abaddon was actually injured last week. She took a shot to the throat and had to go to the emergency room. She was in the hospital, that didn't end up airing on Dynamite. So we'll see where they kind of, I think they have the right people. I think they just need to shift the positions of prominence a bit.
Yep, I was going to say, I do think that they've got the right people, and the people they're bringing in are also the right people. But to be fair, I'm just going to give AEW one little point, and it is true. Their women's division has been hit almost the hardest of any division when it comes to travel restrictions and injuries. I mean, Britt Baker and Chris Statlander both being, on the shelf for injury, not having Riho, not having who did you just mention? Right, they did kind of take a big beating, right? So maybe they're doing the best with what they've got, and they're waiting to really put a lot of effort in until they've got their full cast of characters back. Because the women's division has taken quite a bit of a hit.
Yeah, like I'm looking at their roster right now. I'm looking Abaddon, recently injured. She was going to be on Dynamite but got hurt. Allie, of course, Anna Jay, they're both fine. Awesome Kong, I don't know why she's still on the roster because she's basically retired. Big Swole, we've already talked about. Britt Baker, injured. Emi Sakura, I don't really like her, but of course she's stuck in Japan anyways. Statlander's injured. We haven't seen Mel. I don't know what happened to Mel.
I forgot Mel existed. That feels bad to say. I totally forgot about Mel.
And then we have Riho, Yuka, and Shayna all stuck outside of the country. And then really that leaves us with Tay Conti, Penelope Ford, who had a great match with Hikaru Shida at the last pay-per-view. Rose and Serena, at least for signed female. They still have the contractors that they do sometimes. And just finishing off, just talk about this. The end of the match, Vicky Guerrero gets in the ring and is dressing down Nyla Rose. She is just yelling at her, and Vicky ends up actually slapping Nyla, and I'm like, oh, this is not gonna be good. And Nyla just realizes that yeah, she screwed up, and she starts nodding her head like she agrees with what Vicky says. Vicky turns around and walks out of the ring, and Nyla follows. So interesting little bit of character work between the two of these ladies. So Nyla actually listening to what Vicky had to say and getting yelled at and taking her lashing, if you will.
Right. Is that, just wondering, is that the beginnings of a face turn for Nyla Rose?
I don't know, maybe.
I just thought maybe, you know what I mean? Because she didn't like lash out. It's almost like she's now kind of not the victim per se, but like
Right.
she's not in charge. Like even though she is the bigger woman and she's gonna, she could destroy Vicky if she wanted to. It's kind of like, oh, now we gain a little sympathy for her. I think down the road, maybe that's where they're headed. I couldn't say, but
It's really hard in a women's division to have a face who is the biggest on the roster.
that's fair.
Awesome Kong, she was mostly a heel throughout all of her runs of various companies and whatnot because she was always just the biggest. So it would be hard to turn Nyla babyface. I don't know. I guess we'll see. It would make sense if the belt is going to Britt Baker next. Like she's gonna need some opponents, though they're heavy on the face side anyways. So
That's a good point.
Then next up we have an amazing match of the Young Bucks and FTR. We got Lakers versus Celtics color scheme going on when they come out. They say that Matt had a cortisone shot to his ankle. His real injury is actually his knee. Matt actually starts off with Cash, and Cash wants to test the ankle of Matt right away. We have some good chain wrestling from Dax and Nick. And this match just went a million miles an hour. There were like no rest holds, no downtime, and this match went 28:35. So these guys are sprinting for almost a half hour. It was crazy. Cash tries to do a double axe handle on the outside to Matt at one point. They basically get the heat on Matt for quite a long time, just working him over. Cash ends up crashing into the barricade instead when he's going for the axe handle. Nick does amazing hot tag. FTR comes back, hits a heart attack. There are a lot of classic tag team moves throughout this entire match. We have Matt getting doing a blind tag and then hitting the blind side spear onto, I believe it was Dax. I didn't write down who it was. Matt's knee gives out when he tries to pick up Cash for a buckle bomb. Cash spears the crap out of Nick through the ropes to the floor. Bucks then hit a 3D, a twist of fate, and then a swanton bomb for a 2 count. So shout out for the Dudleys and the Hardy Boys. Nick hits a rebound, or gets hit with a rebound power bomb. And Matt runs in and throws on a crucifix pin onto Dax for a close 2 count. Matt and Dax have a striking exchange. FTR hits the I don't even know what it's called. It's the DIY finisher with the double knees at the
I
same.
think they call it the meet me in the middle.
There you go. So they had a DIY shout out here. Matt puts on the sharpshooter onto Dax, and Dax makes it to the rope, but Nick super kicks Dax's hand. I should mention earlier in the match, Dax punches at Matt and hits the ring post and legit cut his hand open, the meat of his hand, down the side of your pinky. So he was bleeding like crazy the entire match. He actually at one point tagged out and went straight to the doctor so they could throw some tape on his hand. So that must have been a fun thing to work with a legitimately hurt hand for the rest of the match. Matt stomps on Dax's hand at one point, snaps his fingers. Bucks hit a BTE trigger. Cash breaks up the pin. Nick takes out Cash to the outside. Matt grabs a chair and Dax is just like, come on, hit me with it. You'll get disqualified. Come on. He just keeps egging him on. Matt tosses the chair away, sets up for the Meltzer driver. Dax grabs Nick off the apron so he can't do it and hits a powerbomb through the timekeeper table, though the timekeeper table did not break. He just kind of rolled off the end. They hit a mind breaker on Matt, but Matt gets his leg on the ropes to stop the pin. FTR then pulls Matt's boot off and starts attacking the ankle. Nick comes in with a 450 splash for a 2 count to break up the submission hold on Matt's leg. Nick then pulls Matt back to their corner. Cash hits a super kick. Nick is down on the outside. Cash tags himself in and gives Matt the finger. It hits a super kick, but Cash does not go for the pin. He wants to beat the Bucks at their own game, and this is the downfall of him. He goes up and goes for a springboard 450 splash. So the just no flips, just fists guys does a flip and crashes and burns. Matt hits a super kick and gets the pin. The Bucks are now the new AEW Tag Team Champions. This match was excellent.
Yeah, this match ruled, like, absolutely the whole way. You're just riveted throughout. I have to say, before I, dive in, this is still second to me to the Hangman and Omega versus the Bucks because of the build. In ring, this was every bit as good as any other tag team match, especially that one, probably the best tag team match in AEW history. This was right up there. If I had to pick from bell to bell which was better, I don't know if I could pick a favorite. But I can say I preferred the match at Revolution due to the build and some of the post-match teases. Though the post-match here was actually pretty good also. I know we'll talk about that in a moment. But man, I tell you what, when they announced the stipulation, I knew the Bucks were winning. Like, I just had this feeling that that's what was going to happen. And they still had me guessing 100%. And not only that, but going into it, I'm thinking the Bucks are injured. Like, how really are they going to win it, right? How are they going to beat the best tag team in the world? And the answer is, logically, they don't. FTR beat themselves. They broke their cardinal rule because they were so arrogant and wanted to beat the Bucks again, like you said, at their own game, use their own move against them. And what's awesome is they didn't even have to hit a Meltzer driver after. Like, he misses the 450. And logically, it all makes sense because you're like, he doesn't do that often. If he misses a 450, like, he's probably completely out of it. Like, he's devastating to himself because he's not used to doing that. And all it took was a well-placed super kick right in the head. And that's enough for the pinfall. So the finish is perfect. I actually was listening a little bit, and not to, pull other journalist opinion here, but I totally agree. I couldn't not say it. I was listening to Brian Alvarez talk about this match a little bit. And he said years ago, this match, first of all, it was years in the making anyway, based on their Twitter history and the feud, who is the best tag team in the world. A lot of the build behind this match, even though it's been a little weird, a lot of what they said is completely truth, right? It's who is the best tag team in the world. It was the Young Bucks until it wasn't. It was the Revival. They don't say the Revival in any of the video packages. But Brian Alvarez said when they knew that this match could be a possibility one day, they just had to, they must have said this will be the finish. And I'm sure that's not true. But if you had said at that moment, they could have called this finish 3 years ago and built the rest of the match around it because it was perfect. They were just too arrogant. They, went, basically overestimated their own ability, broke their rule. That 450 looked great also. Like he hit it, right? It looked really good, but he got out of the way. It was just amazing. Also, I think, I don't know if you mentioned it, but there was another amazing spot where they were in dual sharpshooters. Nick had one of them outside. I think he had Cash outside the ring, and Matt had Dax on inside the ring, both in stereo sharpshooters. They're kind of trying to hold each other's hand, kind of a callback to their DIY match to keep him from tapping out. Now, Cash, who is the illegal man, is tapping on the ring, or I mean on the ramp, right? He's like, he doesn't want to end. But Dax holds off, and it's actually Matt's ankle that gives out, essentially. He can't really sit into the sharpshooter quite well enough and ends up falling over because he can't keep the hold on long enough for Dax to tap out. So the psychology here, like, I don't want to hear any more from other people who want to say that the Bucks can't sell or the Bucks can't tell a story. Like, I'm just not, if people are still saying that, I'm not going to listen to those people because they're either not watching, they're not paying attention, or they don't care. And I'm just not going to listen to those people anymore. This was one of the coolest and best matches I may have ever seen. And I know that sounds like an overhype, but it was absolutely on par with the best tag match you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah, as far as the selling for the Bucks, I mean, whoever says that hasn't seen the last like 3 years of them in New Japan, where basically Matt had a quote unquote bad back for 3 solid years. He was basically selling the whole time. But yeah, this was a solid match, start to finish. It was high speed the whole time, and then here at the end we have Kenny Omega runs out and hugs the Bucks, and basically the Elite are celebrating in the ring. And who do we see just in the tunnel holding his glass of whiskey is Adam Page. He's just standing there in the tunnel, like you can see it on his face. It's like, oh, am I supposed to go out there? Oh, I don't know if I should go out there. And then he just slowly slinks back down the tunnel. Some people didn't even notice that. Sean Ross Sapp, he didn't even notice it. I saw a tweet where somebody pointed it out to him. He's like, I didn't even notice that. Alvarez and Meltzer, neither of them mentioned that at the end of the match either. So they might have both missed it as well.
I have to say, and this is just another little bit, again, I can't say enough good things about the way that AEW tells some of these stories, especially their long form stories. Think about this. On Wednesday, when Matt was in trouble and they were going to re-Pillmanize his ankle, who was the first one out to help them? Hangman. Kenny was 30 seconds behind him, right? He came out, but second. He came out after. And Hangman's the one who ran them off. And when it came time to celebrate and they won the gold, who was the first one out there? It was Kenny. Kenny's there to help them or to be with them when they win, but not necessarily the first one out there to save them or to put his own neck on the line on their behalf. But he's out there when they win the gold. He's the first one. So it was out after, to me, I don't know if it was intentional, but it was this great little duology where the first one to run out to help was Hangman, and Kenny came out. And then Kenny came running out when it was the moment to celebrate and get, his face out on TV again, to run out there and say, oh yeah, we're celebrating Bucks, And Hangman said, should I go out there and take from this moment? But Kenny didn't care. He said, it's their moment, but I'm going out there anyway. I thought that was a really neat little twist, that Hangman's there in the time of need, but he's more reserved when it comes time to celebrate. He wants to give the Bucks their moment. Thought that was cool.
That even ties back to when Kenny and Hangman won the belts, where the Bucks came in to congratulate them, and Hangman was just a dick to them. And Kenny wanted to celebrate with the Bucks, but Hangman wanted nothing to do with them. So it was a little interesting dynamic right there, where we have both teams and what happens when one wins versus the other one. So yeah, this continues to they continue to slow play this one, where Adam Page is still kind of on the outside looking in and can't decide which way he needs to go and what's okay and what's not. Yeah. Next up, we have the Matt Hardy versus Sammy Guevara Elite Deletion match. This match was supposed to take place probably 5 months ago at this point. Not sure if it is going to be with, it is most likely going to be with Sammy. So they're doing it here. Matt, not on Dynamite, but on the Countdown show, he was clearly broken, Matt. And then throughout this entire match, he was back and forth. So we're going back. He's kind of falling back into the broken universe, and was clearly in the broken universe at the end of this thing. Matt is on the phone. He's calling somebody to have backup on standby. Sammy drives up in a golf cart. Neo, the drone, flies in and shuts down Sammy's golf cart, and Hardy runs over it with a monster truck. Where the hell did that thing come from? I was not expecting a monster truck. He just crushes the golf cart with a monster truck. Sammy uses the monster truck tire to do a moonsault off of. They fight through the forest into the front yard. Hardy hits a side effect on the lawn for a 2 count. Matt Hardy sets up, they fight through the backyard. They fight in a fountain for a second. They fight towards the backyard where there's a ring set up for some reason. Because, everybody's got to have a ring in their backyard. And they fight for a while. Santana and Ortiz run in after Matt's power bombed Sammy through a table. So Santana Ortiz run in. Hardy rolls out of the ring, grabs a walkie-talkie from underneath the ring, and he is summoning Private Party, who are in a car at the other end of the walkie-talkie. So they're his backup, and they come in. Sammy hits a twist of fate, and then Private Party joins the fight at that point. Matt Hardy pulls out some fireworks. They shoot fireworks at each other while Private Party and Santana Ortiz stay in the ring. Matt and Sammy run through the forest shooting Roman candles at each other. Sammy ends up falling down into a mud puddle, and he says something along the lines of, "Sammy, you should get out of there, or else people will think we're doing a mud show," or something like that.
Yeah. Obvious dig at Jim Cornette. He's like, "This is not a mud show."
Hardy hits a twist of fate and is going to throw Sammy into the lake of reincarnation. And then we hear a really scrambled voice that says, "I wouldn't do that." And then we have Gangrel holding Hurricane Helms prisoner. Private Party takes out Gangrel. Hurricane Helms gets freed, and he's like, "What took you so long? It's been 3 years." And he's like, "I had to change companies. It's long-term storytelling." So I'm guessing at some point this is a picking up of Gangrel had kidnapped Hurricane Helms at some point.
Yes, apparently during a Halloween special like 3 years ago. I believe it was something to do when he was in WWE. There was some sort of weird unresolved story point, and which I didn't even see it, so I don't know.
Me neither.
But apparently this is the follow-up to that, where Hurricane Helms was like never rescued, so he's in captivity with Gangrel for 3 years.
And then Sammy comes in and tosses Hurricane Helms into the lake of reincarnation, and then suddenly the roving reporter Shane Helms comes out and starts asking Sammy questions, and he just tosses him back into the lake again, and then back to the ring in the forest. The hurricane actually comes back, so he has gone from the hurricane to the roving reporter back to the hurricane, and Matt and Sammy go off into the darkness of the woods again. Gangrel, Santana Ortiz walk after them, but right as they're getting to the big garage, Matt locks themselves into the quote-unquote dome of deletion, aka the garage, where there is another ring set up. There's a ladder and a table set up in the ring. There's a couple tables set up on the outside. Sammy actually unhooks the turnbuckles and hits Matt with the hook that actually attaches the turnbuckle to the post. He tries to choke Matt with the rope. Matt is pretty much out. Sammy puts Matt onto the table, climbs the ladder. Sammy says, "Delete, delete, delete," and hits a swanton bomb through the table for a 2 count. Matt Hardy hits a twist of fate and then spears Sami off the apron through the table on the outside, but is shot in such a way that you just saw them fall off the end of the apron. And then when they cut over, it's implied that Sami's head had hit the floor, and there's a puddle of blood behind his head. So of course a callback to their match where he got they went a little far off the scissor lift and ended up crashing and burning. So Hardy hits Sami in the mouth with a chair. Hardy yells, "You made me into what I am," and then he smashes the chair on the back of Sami's head against the floor and gets the victory. And then Private Party comes in. They toss Sami into a garbage can. They wheel it outside, load it into the back of a pickup truck, and Senor Benjamin drives off into the darkness.
Yeah, so a couple takeaways. Sami's dead. Like, I wonder how he's gonna come back from death. I mean, I'm just saying, like, to be honest, like, within this match and the story it told in the universe, he can't be alive. Like, he hit his head, he bled out everywhere. He just concertos him, but no chair, just the concrete. And then they're like, all right, let's put his body in here and let Senor Benjamin take him away. So I'm very interested to see where this is going. Even though this was very cool, I'm like, how is this gonna... I think the feud is definitely over. But I'm just wondering how Sami comes back to life, really. It's going to be really interesting. Lot of fun little callbacks here. The boat, dilapidated boat. The fireworks were actually hilarious. Just, they were shooting their own, like, in that moment I was just like, all right, this is just not going anywhere. The ring in the backyard totally makes sense to me because you're at the Hardy's house, but the fact that it had the banner that just said Full Gear, I was like, ow, that's a little silly. Obviously they got to do a little bit more promo work, but if it was just a standard ring with like no apron or no, banner hanging over there, I would have been totally fine with that. That makes sense that there are multiple wrestling rings at the Hardy household. I was kind of hoping that there'd be a callback to the Stadium Stampede when they were at the fountain.
Yeah, that's what I was too.
Right, I was really hoping when they got to the fountain that Sami would dunk him in there and then Broken Matt would emerge and he'd come out in his full, like, Damascus or whatever.
That's what I was hoping.
They were gonna go.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
That's what I was hoping too.
Yeah, that's what I thought was gonna happen. But I mean, it was still super cool. I know this sounds silly, but it's not my favorite of the Broken Universe cinematic matches because now there are enough that we can, kind of be like, hey, this one's up here and this one's here. My favorite is definitely just Jeff and Matt. That was the coolest, but this was very neat for what it was. They're definitely exploring Matt's like semi-broken state, which I think is cool. The long-term booking was very funny. I got a big laugh when he said
long-term storytelling, as I think he said.
So that totally had a good laugh out of me. But like it was kind of just this good, well-produced, funny match that then ended in death. So we'll see what happens. But at the end, I was like, oh, that took a dark turn.
Next up, we had a Jake Roberts Lance Archer video. Jake says that they have nothing to do. We used to have 4 training partners. Now we have none. So it sounds like Lance Archer just killed them all. He says, and then I need to feed this son of a... And he just like stops like, I should not say that, but he doesn't want food, he wants people. And Archer basically says he's gonna crush everybody in AEW and everybody dies.
Everybody dies. That's it.
So I'm curious where this is finally going to go. Next up we have MJF and Chris Jericho. And whoever, if MJF wins, he's going to be allowed into the inner circle. MJF comes out and he starts off in the classic Y2J pose with a light up jacket, no less. They get into the ring, and then once Jericho comes out, we have a thank you Jericho chant, so he's clearly the babyface in this one. And MJF like goes to pose up on the ropes when everybody's saying thank you Jericho, and everybody just starts booing him. So I like that the crowd does what they should be doing. So worked out. MJF offers a handshake and Jericho just slaps him in the face and they go straight to brawling at this point. Jericho took a ton of this match. He was in control for a vast majority of this match. One point he does his fun grabbing the camera and he flips off MJF in front of the camera, which was a funny thing that he does a lot of the times. Jericho hits a Judas effect on the ring post, so MJF moved out of the way. MJF starts attacking the arm. They end up biting each other's fingers. Jericho continues to be in control for the most part. He actually hits a lion salt, which like never happens these days. He also hit a top rope Frankensteiner off the top, which I have not seen him do in like 15 years. They have a striking exchange. Jericho drops MJF with a right hand, but it's bothering him from the earlier attacks. And MJF puts on the armbar. Jericho escapes and gets on the walls of Jericho. MJF he's going to go for a heat seeker, but Jericho pushes him back, but MJF comes back in and kind of hits a code breaker while he's stuck in the ropes and then hits the heat seeker, gets a 2 count. Jericho hits a code breaker of his own for a 2 count. Jericho goes for a Judas effect, but MJF catches it and puts on the Salt of the Earth armbar. Wardlow is then beckoned with the ring. Wardlow runs out and gives him the ring, and Wardlow starts distracting the ref. So as the ref's back is turned, MJF goes to punch Jericho. Jericho ducks it. Jake Hager throws in Floyd the Bat, and now Wardlow's like, turn around, turn around, turn around. And so Jericho has the bat, and MJF gives him the double middle finger, just flops on the mat. Right, and then the ref turns around. Jericho's holding the bat with a laid out MJF on the ground, and he's like, "No, I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything." And then he's pleading with the ref. He turns his back to MJF just for a second. MJF rolls up Jericho and gets the 3 count, and Jericho has to welcome MJF and Wardlow into the inner circle.
So, one quick note. You mentioned, the cheers for thank you Jericho and booing MJF. The crowd definitely tried to kind of make him the babyface, but one of the things I actually really took away from this match and that I really liked is that oftentimes in a heel v heel matchup, someone default works babyface. I kind of felt like they both work heel, like they were biting each other. They were both nefarious. He's flipping off MJF. I was like, they didn't actually lean too much into that trope. Of course, you're going to root for someone or the other, but it kind of seemed to me like they were both cheating and both being dastardly right up until the end, where MJF got the dynamite ring, but based on the distraction, he got the bat. Like, they both were kind of almost out healing each other, and that's part of the reason I really enjoyed the finish, is because in the end, now, in my opinion, since AEW has started, Chris Jericho has been the best heel on the show, and that's including MJF. I love MJF, but I just love Chris Jericho in his title reign. He got a lot of mic time, and he just proved to be the greatest heel. And in this moment, it was kind of like MJF took that title from him. Like, he out-heeled the dirtiest dirty player, right? He pulled the old Eddie Guerrero, and I think even JR said on commentary, he just said, lie, cheat, steal, pulled the old Eddie, and basically just flops himself down. My one wonder, I wonder, and of course it was perfectly booked, so we don't have to have this question answered, but it's, if he hadn't rolled him up, would Jericho have been disqualified? Because they don't do a DQ finish ever. I'm trying to remember how many DQ finishes ever in AEW. I know you can count on one hand, and I'm not even sure if it's more than 1 or 2. So I really wonder, would Aubrey have disqualified Chris Jericho? But again, like I said, it's perfectly booked to the point where you don't really ever need to find out, because thankfully MJF is right there to roll him up, grab a fistful of tights, and keep him down for 3. After the match, I mean, Jericho and MJF are just buddies. He's like, you got me. That was a good trick, and they got their arm around one another. So it's clear that they're on the same page. for now, moving forward. And the big tension is between Wardlow and Hager because they were eyeing each other the whole time they walked out of that ring. They kind of walked parallel to one another. They both got out of the ring at the same time, walked up the steps, and they're just keeping their eyes on one another. So I actually really like that. Maybe there's a matching coming in the future. Maybe only room in the inner circle for one big man. So we'll see.
Yeah, that could be a good way to spin off Wardlow as a babyface prior to the breakup of Inner Circle or the spin out of Jericho. Or maybe Jericho can bring out with Wardlow as babyfaces and leave the rest behind with MJF. That's a possibility. Could be interesting, but yeah, this match was solid. Both of them were working heel. You know, Jericho did an eye poke at one point, and I have not seen this finish used in a very, very long time, where a guy fakes that he had gotten hit with something that is Eddie Guerrero all over it. He did that all the time. That was a favorite of his. So I really liked how they did this finish, but I like how they did not go straight to the DQ, and MJF still got the pin roll up instead of doing the DQ. Though I think if Aubrey did call for the DQ, it would be just as good, because that would be like perfect way to totally screw Jericho out of the loss on that one.
Right. Again, like I said, it's kind of like he took, like, if there is a heel championship, right? MJF just won the heel championship for being the biggest heel on the show, because that was, to me, that was Chris Jericho. And when he pulled that on him and he flipped him off and flopped, I just laughed out loud. And I said, he pulled the dirtiest trick in the book, the dirtiest player in the game. He stole this trick. And it's, a great reference and a great finish. So even if it was a DQ, like you said, I would have still been fine with it, that being the finish, because that was kind of the point of the match.
Yeah, it's even great to see, Jericho being the vet that he is. He trusts MJF and doing that top rope Frankensteiner. Like, that's not something that Jericho would allow anybody else to, because, really, it's really on the person who's taking the move to keep the guy who's actually doing the move safe, because they have to grab the legs when they go over the shoulders. So, he obviously trusts MJF in the ring as well. So that's just like, even right there, even outside of the kayfabe world, just in a, meta sense that, he trusts MJF in the ring with being able to do a move like that. So very cool to see. Next up, we have a short segment. Best Friends and Orange Cassidy are with Dasha. Dasha asks if Orange Cassidy has anything to say. He says, nope, I don't got anything to say. Miro, Kip Sabian, and Penelope Ford walk in. Kip wants a apology from Orange Cassidy for almost getting Penelope hurt last week on Dynamite. Orange Cassidy just says, sorry. And Kip just slaps him across the face. Best Friends want to deck Miro and Kip. Orange Cassidy just holds him back, says, nope, it's all right. And they walk away. So this trio with, well, I guess it's a duo with Penelope, and the trio of Best Friends and Orange Cassidy still have some unfinished business, it seems.
Yeah, and it does seem like they're going to play that out on Dynamite, which I think is fine. Like, I really do think that it's okay to blow off a feud on your television show. And in fact, I know you and I have talked a little bit about the TNT Championship. I would not have been surprised to see that match on, Dynamite next week or maybe last week, because, I mean, it's the TV Championship, essentially. Sometimes it's fine, I think, to blow something off on TV, kind of similar to Santana and Ortiz versus Best Friends. And it seems like Best Friends, again, are going to be involved with kind of a TV-centric feud. So, and I think that's totally cool.
Yeah, I mean, with only having 4 pay-per-views a year and them starting to do kind of like their namesake Dynamites between the pay-per-views, I'm sure we're going to have another, well, I'm probably will, because that's actually where they are. We're probably going to see another Bash at the Beach at the beginning, or I guess they can't call it that. I'm not sure if that was one of the trademarks that Cody traded for his name back. But I'm sure we're going to have some sort of like big show middle of January, in the beginning of January. So there's like a 6-week gap until Revolution, which is going to be February 27th. So it's at the end of February. So they could easily put it, I don't know, around the 15th of January and have a 6-week gap up until the pay-per-view. We'll see how that goes. And lastly, we have the final match of the evening. This is the AEW Championship in an I Quit match. Eddie Kingston challenging Jon Moxley. I am first going to go through this match in the words of Renee Paquette, which is Jon Moxley's wife, off of Twitter, because these are always fun when he's in a crazy match. So the first tweet she puts out is, "So, can I go back to the pleasantries of Christmas movies now?" The next is a frowny face. The next is tax in the head. Come on, man. Then, can I quit this match? And then bulk orders Epsom salt and first aid kit. So that was Renee's tweets during this match, which I always think are really funny because she did the same thing during the Kenny and Moxley match last time as well. So that is where we go here. So they start off throwing punches right out of the gate, and actually Kingston ends up dropping but gets and pops right back up. They go to exchanging chops, do a little bit of mat work. They have a slap fest. Kingston grabs a chair, but Moxley ends up hitting a dive and throws the chair in Kingston's face. Moxley starts some small joint manipulation on the outside. He hits a suplex on the concrete, and Kingston runs Moxley into the ring post. Kingston tosses some chairs into the ring while Moxley grabs a barbed wire baseball bat, hits Kingston a few times with it, rakes his face with it. So now both of them are bleeding at this point. Kingston hits a few suplexes, tosses a chair into Moxley's face, hits Moxley with a chair to the back. Eddie then wraps a piece of barbed wire around his fist and starts punching Moxley with it. And then he hits a spinning back fist, works a Kimura. Moxley actually bites Kingston's leg to break the hold. Kingston sets up chairs face to face. This is a favorite of Moxley's, though Moxley ends up reversing it and sends Kingston into the chair, suplexes him onto the open chair, which did not give very much. He landed square onto the seat of one of them, and he just kind of like bent like a bow over it. They exchange suplexes. Moxley just about takes his head off with a clothesline. Moxley gets, then we have Kingston going outside, grabs a bag from underneath the ring. It is the classic thumbtacks. Moxley gets dropped onto the thumbtacks. Kingston goes to look for some more plunder. He goes over to the dock and grabs a bottle of alcohol. I'm like, oh, that's gonna suck. Kingston stomps Moxley in the balls a few times, and then Moxley gives him the middle finger because he won't quit. Then Kingston pours the alcohol all over the wounds of Moxley. That had to have hurt like hell. Now,
I'm really hoping that was water.
It wasn't. It wasn't, because when he popped the cap off, I saw Kingston. He had to put his thumb through the seal. He had to break the seal on the bottle. So it was legit alcohol. That's what I said. I'm like, why didn't you just use water? But I saw him poke his thumb through the seal.
It means it was fresh.
It means it was fresh. So it was legit alcohol. Kingston punches Moxley with a fistful of tacks, puts on the bulldog choke. Moxley won't quit. He gets out of it, hits a pile driver, then a paradigm shift. Moxley grabs a strand of barbed wire, wraps it around his forearm, uses that arm in the bulldog choke. And Kingston has to quit. But like before he even quits, it looks like he is just like crying to himself, like he does not want to do this, but he knows he is totally screwed and he has to quit. This match wasn't as brutal as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be way worse. Yeah, I thought it was going to be way worse than this.
Well, first of all, I think this match was a little shorter than I expected, which was fine. Like, when you fit that much brutality in a match, you can kind of, it's actually almost, I would prefer to see an I Quit match go a little shorter, because, like, by the end, you're almost begging for the finish. Like, you're like, oh, it's gone on too long. I actually like them leaning this direction. And you're right, like, they could have gone, there could have been beds of barbed wire like there was with, Omega, but I don't think the match needed it. And also, I thought that the spots they did do were just as brutal. They just, I mean, the rubbing alcohol, even if it is gimmicked, like that just the thought, the image, like, because that's something we've all done. You know what I mean? You get salt in a cut and you're like, that stings, right? We can all relate to that happening to us at some point on a minor level. So I just still thought that there was really a good amount of brutality here. And yeah, I mean, it was super cool. Kingston, man. Oh, he's the best. I know I said Hangman's the best actor in this company, but Kingston's face, he just was crying through this. And he almost doesn't. I mean, I know he loses a little bit of credibility and a little bit of, prestige, or not prestige, but I guess his position, his station, right, is degraded a little bit by the loss. But they almost made it so brutal that you were like, of yeah, he has to. You know what I mean? It's not like he gave up too early. Like they both put each other through hell. And then he's being choked by barbed wire at his, like, of course he has to. It totally made sense. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, and he was just so upset with himself. And then after the match, I think Moxley kind of was like, hey, like, you almost not try to make up, but kind of be like, is this over? Are we good? Like, is everything, you know what I mean? And he was not. He was not having any bit. He's still just out of his mind and probably driven even more toward insanity because he had to say, I quit. And just seeing the words on his mouth when he mouthed, I quit, I was just like, it really got me emotionally. I was like, this is really intense stuff. Really amazing. Again, brutal, short, to right about where I'd want it to be in terms of time. And Moxley's reign is just re-galvanized. I mean, he's just proven himself again that he is the guy.
Yeah, I like how they did this match as far as the I quit stipulation. They didn't have the guy grabs the mic and shoves it in the other guy's face. Like we've seen in plenty of I quit matches. This was simply the ref checking on him like any other match, like a regular submission match where he's like, do you give up? Do you give up? And the guys say no or anything like that. So it wasn't like shoving the microphone into the guy's face. It was like legitimately like a normal like a normal fight would be going in a regular submission match or whatever, where the ref would eventually call the match when somebody gives up. So I like that they didn't do that trope that has been used throughout the years, and this is the way to do it. It's way more real than the other.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the build to this match, like, at length in our AEW Dynamite reviews. But I just have to say, like, this entire build, the feud, the match, the promos, everything about this has felt real. Like, it really has just been like beyond any other program I can think of in recent memory, and even in the last couple of years, really, this has felt so grounded in reality. And I love it. They're just taking it that one extra step. That the reason we love pro wrestling, right? This feels real, and they're just taking it to that extra step that you wouldn't see it in an MMA fight. You wouldn't see rubbing alcohol and barbed wire. That's why we like our WWEs and our AEWs, because they take it just to the next step. And man, the finish, everything about this match was awesome. As a quick aside, before we move on, I don't know if you saw it. I don't know if you browse the Squared Circle subreddit at all, but there was a picture that someone had drawn on there, and I just thought it was the cutest thing. It was Jon Moxley sitting in a kiddie pool, and it's drawn in like an anime style. And it's Jon Moxley with all these scratches on his face sitting in a kiddie pool. And there's a little Will Hobbs pouring Epsom salt into stuff. And there's Shoto Umino behind him with a first aid kit. And Renee is like taller. She's like adult sized. And she's like patting John on the head. It was the funniest little thing. But it was little Will Hobbs and little Shoto, or Shooter, little Shooter, as Jon Moxley calls him, both nursing him back to health. But, I mean, not to take away from the very seriousness of this match, I thought that everything they did here was awesome. And again, I don't think that Kingston loses a lot for quitting after barbed wire choked him out.
Yeah, and then after the match, we have Kenny Omega makes his way out, but he does not get into the ring. They have an exchange of some light words, but nothing that we can hear. They just kind of make some gestures at each other, and along the lines of Omega's like, yeah, I want nothing to do with this type of match ever again with you. So, but I am going to take the title from you in my match. So, just a little quick little face off, but nothing nothing massive coming out of it. So I'm curious when this match will actually take place. If they're going to hold it off all the way to Revolution, I mean, it'd make the most sense. It's pay-per-view quality match. So what are they going to do with the title in between? Moxley has to at least defend the title again at some point between now and then, probably even twice. So I'm curious who they line up with. Obviously, Taz on this past week's Dynamite said Cage is sitting at number 1. He should be getting a title match. So we might get a rematch with Cage and Moxley, but I don't know why we would, because he's already beaten Moxley. I mean, Moxley's already beaten Cage. So, I mean, we've seen that match, though we've already seen the Kingston match. So.
Right. One thing that popped into my mind when talking about this, like you said, we don't know if they're going to hold it off all the way to Revolution. That makes the most sense to me, but it's kind of like, we do know who the number 1 contender is. We already know what that match is going to be if they're waiting until then. So one thing that popped in my mind, I don't know if this sounds like it makes any sense, but I know that they like to put some emphasis on their year-end shows. I believe last year they were like, this is the last Dynamite of 2020. And the last couple shows of 2019, if I remember correctly, were kind of hyped a little bit. They were built a bit bigger, saying, hey, before the records reset, here's where it's going to be. You know what I mean? One thing that I thought would be neat, because Moxley is undefeated in 2020, would be on the last Dynamite of 2019, have the match, or a match, between Omega and Moxley, and have Moxley lose. Have the title change on TV. They've not had any title changes on TV.
You mean the last match of 2020?
In the last match of 2020.
You said the last match of 2019.
Sorry. The last match of 2020. So with that, before records reset, Moxley is like 23-1. I thought that'd be a cool little touch to have Moxley just because, I mean, after he loses the title, what's he gonna do? He has to be in a program somewhere, and we've been conditioned to put him at the top for so long. But I think he's kind of going to move out of that scene in order to allow room for Omega, new challengers for Omega, and of course, eventually Hangman. So Moxley has to come into the TNT scene. He has to, just start feuding with somebody. He's a guy in the company, and they're going to have to make use of him. So it'd be nice to show a little bit of vulnerability. The last match of the year, have Moxley take his loss, change hands, rematch at Revolution, and Kenny retains against the former champion. I thought that'd be a cool little idea. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it does make the most sense to wait till Revolution, because that's like, but yeah, I mean, at some point they're going to have to change the heavyweight title on TV. When do you do it? Do you do it in year 2? Do you do it in year 4? Right. 5? It's like, when is the right time to change the heavyweight title on TV? I don't know. Oh, there was one thing. Oh, okay. Well, so let's go through our picks here. I pretty much destroyed you.
Yes, you did.
Because the only one I got wrong was one that we both got wrong.
Yes, it was.
So we both picked Omega. We both picked Moxley. I picked Shida, so I won on that one. We both picked Bucks. We both picked Sammy, but we both were wrong on that one. Both took Allin, both took MJF. I took Orange Cassidy, you took Silver, and then we both picked Serena Deeb. So I got them all except Sammy versus Hardy, and we both had that one wrong.
Yep, and I missed 3. Again, Silver, I should have just put a little more thought into, just knowing that it's enough of a push for him to be, going 10 or 12 minutes with Orange Cassidy, who, beat Chris Jericho. So that's enough of a push. And having a pay-per-view match. This wasn't even on the buy-in. It was actually on the main card. So that's enough of a push for Silver. The Shida thing, that was kind of I think Shida probably would have been my smart choice, but I was really just thinking that they need something to spark that women's division, and I thought a title change might help. But yeah, you are definitely the winner this time, sir.
That's way better than Dustin and I during, I don't know which pay-per-view, it might have been Double or Nothing. We got like all of them wrong. We were so wrong on so many of them. Anything you want to cover before we wrap it up here? We do have Penta versus Phoenix on Wednesday, Butcher and Blade versus Natural Nightmares in a bunkhouse match, which is just a no DQ, no countout match, and Tay Conti versus Red Velvet. Those are at least what have been already announced.
Right. No, nothing necessarily I want to cover. I think that overall, this was definitely the best pay-per-view of 2020, and definitely strong argument to be made for the best AEW pay-per-view they've ever done. If I have any complaints, it really was a lot of wrestling. Like there was a lot to take in here. If you were mentally prepared and ready to watch, a lengthy but quality show, then absolutely. The only criticism I might have is maybe move Silver and Orange Cassidy also to the buy-in. It felt like there was not a lot. Well, I mean, only the one match, and it didn't even go 10 minutes, I don't think. So it would have been nice to maybe have a second match on the buy-in. And I think Cassidy and Silver might have been the one to move over there, kind of keep the main card a little shorter. Other than that, though, really cannot complain. I would feel bad complaining. Like this is just a very, very strong show. And that's about it. It was awesome.
I know it makes sense, and I don't really have a big problem with it since they're only doing 4 pay-per-views a year. If they're 4-hour shows, I'm perfectly fine with that. It's not a big deal if they're only doing it 4 times a year. So I mean, it's only 12 hours total over the course of a year. I mean, 16 hours because I can't do math. So I mean, it's not a huge deal. Yes, it was long, but all the match flow was good. I think they put all the matches in the right order. All the matches, nothing was boring. There weren't like any snoozers, and yeah, I thought it was a really good card up and down. So I did not mind the length of it. I didn't even really notice it until I realized it was 12:20 when I was done watching.
Right. Yeah, 100%. I think that this was really awesome, and I'm really glad that we got what we got. Especially just the FTR and Young Bucks match sticks out in my mind as something that had been such a long time coming, and something that really needed to live up to the hype. And they, really outdid themselves. But really, in every spot, I really enjoyed the TNT title match as well. That one sticks out to me as well, mostly because I love that result. But it was a great time. So.
Yeah, curious to see where they continue on for the TNT Championship now that's on Darby.
Yes, sir.
All right, so thanks everybody for tuning into That's Wrestling. Be sure to check us out on Tuesday. We're going to be getting back up to speed with New Japan, covering some of the title matches that has happened. We've had the 6-man never open weight, the junior and heavyweight tag championship matches, plus we had Power Struggle this past Saturday, so we'll be covering kind of the big matches up until, and then covering Power Struggle as well on Tuesday. So that should be 7:00 Eastern. So be sure to check that out over on the YouTube channel. If you are listening to this as a podcast, head over to the YouTube channel because we do this show live. So if you have any questions and all that fun stuff, you can put them in the chat, or you can send questions, comments, feedback to Eric at that'swrestling.com. There's also a Discord you can come hang out with. Also, you can follow us on Twitter. I see Caleb has actually started posting over there. So at That's Wrestling 1 with the number 1 at the end. And did I say Discord already? Discord is in the show notes, so you can come hang out with us there. Head over to iTunes, give us a review. It really helps in the search results. And I believe that's it. So for Caleb Johnson, my name is Eric LaRoche, and you've been watching and listening to That's Wrestling. See you later, guys.